I think the most important thing for people that are coming in and also the new businesses is to remember that psychedelics are not just, there's a history to it, and it's something that has, for a lot of cultures, a deep roots, and it's considered sacred, and it's considered something very powerful and potentially dangerous. And so it has to be treated with deep respect. It's not just like giving a pill to somebody. So this idea that you're just going to treat people with psychedelics and you can just, give it to them as if it was any kind of drug. And so I encourage people to learn about the roots of psychedelics, and this have to do with indigenous people.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Psychedelic Conversations. Today with me, I have Dr. Bia Labate. Welcome to the show. So great to have you.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So wonderful. I've been following your work, and this is an exciting time for me to be able to have this personal conversation with you and introduce you to my community over the UK. Before we begin, if you don't mind, I'll just say a few lines from your background for our listeners in case it's their first time meeting you. You are a queer Brazilian anthropologist based in San Francisco, Ph.D. in social anthropology from the University of Campinas, Brazil. And your main interests are to study plant medicines, drug policy, shamanism, ritual, religion, and social justice. You are an executive director of the Chacruna Institute, which is where I found you, and I've been following your work for psychedelic plant medicines. And you serve as a public education and culture specialist at the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies, MAPS. Also Adjunct Faculty at the East-West for Psychedelic Psychology program at the California Institute of Integral Studies, and advisor for the Veteran Mental Health Leadership Coalition and the Soltara Healing Center. You have also a group for Psychoactive Studies in Brazil. And you have also authored and co-authored and co-edited 27 books, 2 special edition journals, and several peer-reviewed articles, which will have all the links and your website and everything that we have for you in the show notes for our listeners to connect with you and find more of your work.
Thank you.
To begin with, what brings you to this work? It's always my personal interest.
Well, I got interested in psychedelics as I had experienced firsthand psychedelics and felt a lot of deep mystical and spiritual connections and a lot of gratitude, and really touched my heart. And from that, as a kind of natural continuation, started to inquire about it, read, and I've always liked to organize conferences and groups and bring people together, and started to create conversations around it and check notes between different disciplines and different perspectives. And it kind of, my interest grew organic from that.
So wonderful. So one of the videos, well, lectures or the educational videos that I have been listening to, Horizons, not long ago, I think it was this year, beginning of this year, there is a talk that you delivered, really touched everything that I've been also feeling around the medicines. And of course, bridging the religious and the spiritual connection and the intersection between the therapeutic, the clinical work of the psychedelic medicine. So that talk of yours, we'd like to also link it to the show notes. I think it was very powerful, very moving, and it touched me personally. It's for the Horizons. It was perspectives on psychedelics. and your talk was on religious and spiritual approaches to psychedelics. I'm not sure if you remember. I have taken some notes because I thought it was so relevant in this time, what we're going through, and I would love to hear your thoughts on that. But before we go into it, what is your mission with the Chacruna Net, and how did it come about to being?
Well, we call it Chacruna Institute. So chacruna.net is the website address. So it's called Chacruna Institute for Psychedelic Plant Medicines, or just Chacruna Institute or Chacruna. People sometimes make the mistake in the way they call us, but we are a grassroots nonprofit organization. We are based in the Bay Area. I think you're just probably hearing the cable car there. I live right in front of the cable car line, so apologies for the noise. And we are interested in promoting indigenous reciprocity, and also we are engaged in what we call psychedelic justice, which is trying to empower the voices of minorities, so indigenous people, people of color, women, queer people, immigrants, people with disabilities, people from the global south, and trying to elevate these voices, platform these voices, and give visibility and center their stories, and try to help rewrite the narratives of this field, including these other perspectives that are often marginalized and overlooked. And we have a program also on the protection of sacred plants and cultural traditions. So we have been, the base of Chacruna's work, and Chacruna is named after ayahuasca. It's also been my main topic of personal interest and research for my entire life, my professional career. And so we're also supporting, we have a big library of cases, and supporting people that had problems with law enforcement and have been documenting and creating research around this topic for a lifetime. And we have the Council for the Protection of Sacred Plants, which is a group of lawyers and biologists and anthropologists that are working on issues on conservation. And so these are the main programs of Chacruna: indigenous reciprocity, psychedelic justice, protection of sacred plants, and cultural traditions. Altogether, we are dedicated to education, and our emphasis is on topics that we believe are important and necessary to create a better infrastructure for this so-called ecosystem. So there's a lot of people creating different startups or companies, and different personal projects or retreats or clinics or research, but it's hard to just work on topics that are for the common good and then have a kind of social perspective. That is really the role of a nonprofit, and it's just more challenging to create something like that because you don't have people immediately interested in funding that. And so that's been part of our passion project and lifestyle and activism and spiritual path, and it's very personal for us. And we have a pretty nice team of really committed individuals, and we have been dedicated in the last years to doing a lot of stuff. We have branched out our programs. Now we have courses, and we have online events, and we have in-person events, we have conferences, we have publications. We go a lot, we have a strong presence in conferences. We give a lot of lectures, and Chacruna has tables that are like educational on the context of these bigger conferences that are full of more mainstream approaches and naive people and beginners. And we're trying to promote this education and helping, steer the whole field in better directions as it goes more mainstream, and there's more commercialization and also some banalization and vulgarization around these topics that are so sacred and dear for us. And so we always try to bring our perspective and make our contribution, and we're very collaborative. We have a big network of community partners, around 70 different organizations that we collaborate with, and also a branch that is collaborating with universities. Have had a presence in different discussions around decriminalization around the US, and then of course our Indigenous Reciprocity Initiative that currently has supports with small grants 17 different organizations in 7 countries. And so, yeah, it's a lot going on. Sorry if I went too long. It's a bit hard to focus on. Chacruna is a really diverse network.
I can hear that. So it's the Chacruna Institute for Education on all various topics and different approaches. Do you have any collaborations and affiliates in the UK?
Well, we have one team member that is a volunteer that used to be paid staff, and then she's taking a leave to write her Ph.D., to finish her Ph.D. And we have collaborated with the University of Kent, that is in the UK, through our board member, Daniela Peluso, and the other colleague is Emily Sinclair, and we have advanced with them the sexual abuse awareness guidelines. So we got together, a bunch of us, during several months and put together some guidelines to raise awareness around the problem of sexual abuse, and created these guidelines. They were translated for 13 languages. They have been downloaded over 30,000 times already. And I think it really helped change, common sense views, bad common sense views on this topic. When we started talking about this issue of sexual abuse, I gave a lecture in 2010 for the first time about this topic, or 2012, in the Women's Visionary Congress. It was pretty, pretty stigmatized to talk about it, and people had a lot of feelings that you were like endangering ayahuasca, and it was already so stigmatized and already so disregarded, and had, all kinds of social and legal taboos and persecution. So we shouldn't be talking about this. We should just talk internally and discreetly. But we think that airing this is better, and it actually helps give more legitimacy to the movement, because there is self-accountability. So we have worked on producing these guidelines. They were translated to over 10 languages, and we also have some legal resources around them, which is support for victims or survivors. And we help spread these guidelines in Iquitos, Peru, the capital of ayahuasca tourism, so to speak, and also have been sharing this guidelines in different conferences and presented across different events, and always take them and share them and talk about it. And we feel that nowadays women are speaking more out. And recently we saw this woman come out on an Instagram video talking about some transgressions, abuse from this guy in Peru. And there was a real commotion around it, and he was kind of, taken out of business. And there was a big discussion. I think things that back in the past 10 years ago, 15 years ago, were much harder to happen. And we feel that now it's much more incorporated. Of course, it's not just us. A lot of people are doing this work, and it's really important to be as united as possible when it comes to this kind of thing. So that's one piece of thing that we have to do with the UK. And we also have another team member, Nick Spears, who's an anthropologist and filmmaker, and he is British, although I do not see him so much as a British person, because I met him in Mexico. I speak Spanish to him, and he has lived and worked in Mexico many years, and now he lives in Portugal. So actually, he is the one person in Chacruna that, like me, speaks Spanish, Portuguese, and English. But yeah, those are our UK connections.
That's wonderful. And it's very impressive, the work that you did for the, having some accountability. So this is the conversations that we're having all the time. As the psychedelic renaissance is growing and people are becoming more interested, and there is this mainstreaming. And I am aware that you were delivering talks at the psychedelic conference in Colorado in June. And what are you seeing? What are your observations? Where do you think we're going? And some of the risks maybe we need to be really aware of, because my listeners, my listeners are quite sort of new. Some of them are seasoned psychedelic explorers, but there are new people that are emerging. And since Michael Pollan's Netflix series, I think the landscape of psychedelic seekers are changing. We're getting more people from the corporate world, the normal Western families, modern societies, just wanting to explore more and learn more. So there is this emerging two worlds coming together. And then there is this other world where, yourself being in the front lines for many years and done so much to provide education and service. What are you seeing that is happening at the moment, and what should be aware of?
Well, it's a pretty hard question, that has a lot of angles. I think the most important thing for people that are coming in, and also the new businesses that are being born right now, is to remember that psychedelics are not just, there's a history to it, and it's something that has for a lot of cultures, deep roots, and it's considered sacred, and it's considered something very powerful and potentially dangerous. And so it has to be treated with deep respect. And it's not just like giving a pill to somebody. So this idea that you're just going to treat people with psychedelics and you can just, give it to them as if it was any kind of drug is a very reductionistic understanding of psychedelics that have always been imbibed in deep cultural systems and ways of doing things and knowledge and technologies around them. And also this attempt to strip the psychedelic effects out of the psychedelics is quite questionable. So this whole idea to sanitize it and hygienize it and make it a utilitarian pill, I think is a very reductionistic approach. And so I encourage people to learn about the roots of psychedelics, and this have to do with indigenous people that have found this substance, discovered the substances, and they are the real creators. And imitating these formulas is something, either we imitated their practices, or used their substances, or learned about the chemical combinations and made our own. But we have to be in touch with the roots of this movement. And even just synthetic psychedelics, they owe a lot to indigenous people. There's this continuity between shamanism and ceremonial uses of sacred plants and psychedelic, and the underground, and now the above ground psychedelic-assisted therapy. So I think learning about the roots of this movement is really important, and taking into consideration the cultural contexts, the larger social and historical context of where these plants emerge from, and our beliefs in them is extremely important. And, a lot of people have never tried psychedelics, and they are investing in psychedelics as if it was any kind of new opportunity. And they, are not aware that psychedelics might not work for everybody. And also there are some contraindications, and in some cases it might be potentially damaging, and it's just not a magic pill. It's not a panacea. It doesn't work for everybody in the same way. We also should try to keep expectations reasonable and not sell miracle cures, and avoid messianism to say that this is the main healing cure for the entire humanity and all kinds of diseases. So we need to have a balanced approach grounded in education, in harm reduction, and in knowledge, and in the awareness that it's important to give back to those that have brought the substances to us in the first place. So having awareness about what each plant is, the bioculture it comes from, the conservation status it is related to. There's a lot of angles to take into account. I'm not sure if that was the kind of thing you're looking for.
Yes, that was very helpful. Thank you. And I heard you saying that healing is a holistic affair. I guess looking at the social context, you said the relationships, social relationships, the historical context. Do you find that the Western mind is trying to bypass this and we want to get to the cure pill quickly? You know, that consumerism, need to heal quickly, that kind of thing.
Yeah, for sure. And there's also this quick fix is also related to the idea that some people want to patent certain substances. So it's important to to make strong claims and to own this particular substance for this particular disease is kind of a model that is, at the core of how this industry, so to speak, is being advanced. And it's much harder if you think that, these substances can treat a lot of different ailments, and there's lots of different combinations for particular individuals in particular contexts. It just become more messy, right? Like a hot mess, and that is something that you can't classify so easily, and you can't capture, and you can't patent, and you can't commercialize that easily. And so, yeah, we have try always to remember, look at traditional populations and what they are saying about healing. It's not just the chemical properties of the substance. It's this larger enterprise that involves the individual and his history and his relationship to himself and where he's at, but also his relationship to his community, to his kin, to his family, to the larger community. So a relationship to each other, and also what traditional indigenous populations are telling us to the invisible world, or to the world beyond, to the world of the spirits, or the dead, or the ancestors, or the invisible immaterial reality, and of course to the planet, to Mother Nature, to a larger container that we are all part of. And so traditionally a way to talk about diseases that is a lack of harmony in these dimensions, and restoring that balance involves all of these different dimensions. And the chemical properties is just a part of it, and you can't just strip everything out of it and reduce it again to a pill. And so we like to stimulate reflection around this wisdom that comes before us and that is still prevalent in many parts of the world. Actually, the history of the use of psychedelics and this other model, this recent model, is very small and very minor, in the sense that it's done, by a bunch of researchers and new so-called industry again. But it has been used traditionally in many different parts of the world for thousands of years. Of course, I'm doing a few generalizations here, putting a lot of different things together, but yeah.
I understand, yeah. And I did laugh when you said it's quite scary to take psychedelics in front of a clinical doctor or a hospital or a setting like that. I know you were joking. You did clarify that, but at the moment we have this clinical approach. The medical and the therapeutic is really strong in the Western part of the world, and I guess maybe there is a connection of people being so isolated. They don't really belong to a community, and they work in corporate spaces. They feel that there's a lot of loneliness, and there's a lot of individuals seeking to optimize their health and well-being, but there's not much education around the community and how to come back to the roots, the original roots of the proper appropriation of this of the medicines.
Even if you go to all of these retreats, and I have attended a lot of ayahuasca retreats in my life, there is this very strong pursuit to be a better person, to overcome your childhood trauma, to get in touch with your pains, to look at your own history. And of course, that is all super valid and it's very important. But we have very little conversations, first of all, trying to understand the cultures of those people that are offering these substances for us. And like, do you know their language? Do you know how many of this, folks exist in that area? Are they native from that area, or are they coming from another one? Do you know their names? Do you try to speak to them? Do you relate to them? Do you have friendships with them? And do you know anything about their traditions and their roots? So there's very little interest in learning about these populations. And then also there is not so much interest in trying to create intentions about having collective responsibilities. I remember once I was in a workshop with a famous psychedelic leader, and he was talking about intentions and asking people to talk about their intentions for the retreat. And somebody said that her intentions was she came from an area that the rivers had been damaged and they were polluted, and she wanted to work on restoration of that river. And he kind of diminished her ask and her intention and said, no, how about you start having some intention of improving yourself first, because the first step is to improve yourself, and then you can change, other things. Like if she was doing some sort of escapist intention by not having an intention for herself and having such an intention. But in fact, that's a very legitimate intention, and that's a really important intention. So why is your personal pursuit more important than being engaged in, I don't know, social work or volunteering? Or what is if your intention is to have less intentions and try to be more of service to your community and try to empower those people that have less power? And what if you want to make of your intention to be a political activist and help elevate the voices of those people that are marginalized and use your power and privilege for those goals? And so we see a lot of hedonism and this culture of wellness and this pursuit of happiness and incessant project of building the self, sometimes at the cost of the collective, or not taking the collective into account. And so we think it's important to reascribe this collective purposes. And also there are systematic crises to the planet that are really common to all of us and that are very urgent, and also do not get a lot of attention from the psychedelic movement. The psychedelic movement is generally quite apolitical, and it's not talking about, for example, intellectual property and indigenous rights, or supporting indigenous struggles for land, or supporting indigenous political struggles when it comes, for example, I am Brazilian, and we had just an administration that was promoting a proactive genocide of indigenous people. And imagine if we had all these ayahuasca lovers of the planet, or all the psychedelic lovers, really standing in solidarity with indigenous people in the Amazon and elsewhere, how powerful would that be? And so I've also spoken to that in my opening remarks in a keynote that I gave in Psychedelic Science 2023 recently. And this is not about, having indigenous representation on conferences only, but it's about empowering indigenous voices. and working with indigenous recognized leadership and bona fide institutions, and being in dialogue and putting your platform in support of those causes is really important.
I love this. This is so wonderful. I believe it's kind of like, I'm coming from a psychotherapy background, and it's always, when we start to work with the client, usually you see that there is a thick bubble of shell that they cannot see beyond. It's all about this very limited, my life, my stage, my problems, my needs haven't met. So I've got to, fix this first. And there's a lot of fixing, non-stop processing, especially with the advancement of technology. Everybody now is learning all these phrases, the trauma, and we're all kind of indulging and immersing ourselves in this more individualistic, more individualized seeking or pursuing of healing, whatever that is now being promoted as, and completely being again stripped away from the larger responsibility of what is it to be a human in this world, sharing the world with everyone. I think what you speak to is very touching, and having an intention to just heal a very early trauma, as opposed to having an intention to really look at a larger picture of what is going on, right? That's, for me, it's always been that way. The psychedelic medicines and their messages, the entheogenic medicines, some people call it, it's always been that, there's a larger collective intention and gathering that they invite us, and then not so much this very small, limited material materialistic intentions, like you said in the retreat. So what do we do with this now? Who's going to be accountable, keeping everyone accountable? There are no organizations apart from, like, I know your organization and MAPS doing great work in harm reduction and some kind of guidance. What do you think we need to all do? In different countries, people are really coming together, wanting to learn about psychedelic medicines, and there is this growing interest in becoming a psychedelic-assisted therapist. So
yeah, it's a very new field, as it is, the advancement of clinical trials on the one side, with MDMA potentially becoming a treatment for PTSD and psilocybin for depression, and then decriminalization across the United States. And we also have legal cannabis in many places, and legal ketamine. It's a kind of a really vibrant landscape with a lot going on, a lot of new businesses, a lot of new startups, and a lot of new research projects. And people are contemplating having careers in psychedelics in ways that they didn't before. I myself, my partner is a clinical psychologist and can't really work full-time with psychedelics. Not a lot of people can work full-time with psychedelics, but more people than ever can work full-time with psychedelics. Now there's new mentorship programs and new, research. Academic universities are opening up research programs everywhere. So there's a lot of opportunity. It's a very fresh field, and there's a lot to be done. And I encourage everybody that is watching and listening to be a part of this, because we need people that are, have good hearts and have their hearts in the good place, and have energy, and have, want to put their lives in service to such a noble cause. And we need good people that are interested in creating projects that have, a social justice impact, that have a kind of social responsibility that is not just, pure profit making. I don't think it really matches with the world of psychedelics. Again, there's all kinds of people and approaches, and this thinks, psychedelics is not going to be able to invert the systemic issues of capitalism, and we are heirs of a lot of really heavy systems of systemic racism and legacies of colonization, and inequalities between North and South, and all kinds of predatory relationships to nature. So us in the psychedelic movements, it's hard for us to correct and rewrite the entire mistakes and complexities of our world, but I think we also have to keep the hope, or else we become cynical and there is less stimulus to do good in the world, and have, keep up the optimism and knowing that everybody can do their share and have their contribution, and more drops on the bucket in the right side. Again, I think it's important to create projects for the common good, and not just projects that are for personal fulfillment and financial stimulation. At Chacruna, we try to do our contribution, and we have a membership program. I invite everybody that wants to support us financially to become a member. We are entirely grassroots and entirely self-funded. We don't have any major constant donors or supporters. We usually have about 2 months of runaway. So it's really hard to keep projects going. And you can also see there's a great amount of organizations that are opening and closing the whole time. There's a lot of organizations, both nonprofit and for-profit, that have opened and closed in the last at least 5 years that I have witnessed. For example, we have our program of community partners that is over 70 organizations. Each 3 to 6 months, we have to update it because a lot of organizations disappear and a lot of the staff rotates. So when it comes to nonprofit, there's a huge staff rotation. It's really hard to have staff retention. And also there's just that, founding paradox of a nonprofit, which is you find voices that, are new and powerful and unheard, and then you platform them, and they grow in the career, and eventually they are not working with us anymore. And that's kind of part of the work we do. We're kind of a trampoline for people and for careers. We have helped a lot of people find jobs and get visibility and get invitations for lectures that have then gotten them jobs, or found romantic partnerships, or created new projects out of participating with us. So it's a very dynamic and fluid and effervescent field that a lot of parts are moving, and it's a good time to be joining this movement.
Yes, agreed. Thank you so much for sharing that. I am aware of your programs and trainings on your website, so we'll have that linked as well. Is there a specific one that you recommend? Because currently I'm getting a lot of messages from people that are in the therapy, or counselors, or people that have done some helping work, and they are always emailing and saying, where would you recommend us to seek for certification or some training that is reliable and also connection to the indigenous? And I can't think of anyone better than your institution and your platform for this purpose.
Thank you, Susan. That's really kind of you. And I know you've been trying to hunt me down, and I thank you for your patience. I am quite overwhelmed with everything. We get so much requests, like we get about 250 emails a day with different kinds of requests through our 5 different emails. And sometimes we don't answer all of them, and I apologize in advance for people that might have trouble. We're overworked and understaffed and underpaid, but we're doing our best. I want to invite everybody to come to our next conference, Psychedelic Culture, which will be in the Brava Theater in the glorious Mission neighborhood, Latin neighborhood in San Francisco. Very cool, very artistic and Latin. And it's an old theater that is run by a group of women, a co-op and kind of thing. And it's really a nice venue. And we're going to have 3 simultaneous tracks. That's in the end of April. And we're going to be the kind of basis of this conference will be Chacruna Main's project. So shamanism and plant medicine, we're going to have a whole track about that. And then we're going to have a whole other one about psychedelic justice. And we're going to have another one about, queer issues, all of the topics that we are involved with, decriminalization. And that's one thing that I invite people. And we also have our community forums that, are different conversations. For example, last week we had deaf people and psychedelics. It was totally new and interesting conversation for me, which I was nervous to host because I don't know anything about this topic, but we do things with this cultural humility and this curiosity, for learning with minorities. And so we have the regular community forums that we do. And then we also have different courses. Currently, we have one on shamanism, ritual and religion. It's called The Roots of Psychedelic-Assisted Therapy. And this one is we have around 60 students that are registered. Of course, it's also, again, we got like 80 scholarship applications and 5 people actually buying the tickets. And we have done, sliding scale for people. We are also starting a new queer course that we have going on. We're going to have rapé, which is tobacco snuff with mixture nicotiana species, different kinds of nicotiana, and then different medicinal and aromatic plants. And a tobacco snuff. We're going to do 2 circles in Brooklyn with our friends of the Brooklyn Psychedelic Society. That's going to be After Horizons in New York now, upcoming October 16 and 17. And we have another one in Berkeley with our friends of the Portal Community Center on October 18th. We're also continuing to participate in different conferences. So we are always tabling in conferences and providing this free education. So we have in-person events, online community forums, conferences, and different courses. And then also we're always publishing about 2 times a week or so. The schedule is not completely regular, but we publish different articles. So, the articles are also on topics that are dear to Chacruna: queer issues, women issues, indigenous voices, cultural critical conversations on commodification, on sexual abuse, on other things like integration or music or shamanism. So we have them, they are free as well. And then we have the ongoing work of the Indigenous Reciprocity Initiative of the Americas, which support this small organizations that are indigenous-led or co-led with indigenous people. And the criteria to join our organization is that they have to have a good track record of activities and not be like grantees of big nonprofits in the global north, and that they have, we respect their rights of sovereignty and self-determination, and we're not telling them what to do with the money or asking big decks or sexy marketing materials, or the money is not string attached. It's generally for operations. And a big part of the Indigenous Reciprocity Initiative is really also educational. We give, we have a series on indigenous voices in social media. And then we have also different lectures that we support. We're doing 2 workshops. One is on how to create, how to create your church and learn legal aspects for you to be better protected as a legal church in the United States, but also how to create best practices and learn basic things on cultural humility and non-tokenization, and learning about, the roots and the sources of the medicine you consume, and how do you transport it, how do you store it, how do you keep track, do you pay taxes, don't pay taxes, do you register as a nonprofit, do you pay insurance or not? So it's a whole, this is based on our Religious Freedom Restoration Act best practices guidelines. It's also for free in our site. And the other workshop that we have upcoming is on how to be better allies to indigenous people, how to stand in solidarity, and how to help advance the use of plant medicines with more cultural humility and political awareness. And so we have workshops as well, and we have a free newsletter that comes out usually every Monday. And then we have a very dynamic social media team of millennials and Gen Zs, with cool videos, and we kind of do all of our aspects. We hardly ever outsource anything in Chacruna. We're sort of multi-talented in different areas. We just opened a TikTok account, and so it's a very dynamic organization. We have just 5 employees and then a bunch of contractors. Everybody's part-time, and we have over 50 volunteers. So it's a busy kitchen. If you look in the behind the scenes, juggling a lot of plates, and doing a lot of fun things, different social media series as well. We have different infographics and reels, and trying to speak, across generations, for young people and older people, for people from social sciences, anthropology, but also biomedical people, also naive people. We have this membership program. We have different circles. We have a queer integration circle. We have just a regular integration circle, and we have one that is called Quara. It's a circle of gratitude with our friend from Brazil, Glauber, and trying to celebrate, this mystery of being alive and the blessings of plant medicines, and the good that all of us received in our hearts for being able to experience this firsthand.
Wow. That's a powerful passion project, I hear. This is wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And you have infinite number of lecture videos on different organizations, like you said, your allies and your different corporate collaborations that I love listening. So I definitely invite our listeners to check it out and support. So as we're coming to the end of our conversation, one of the things I'd like to ask for my personal interest as well, you are so prolific in writing and you share so many books. And what are you sharing in your books? And do you have a favorite one or the most popular one that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, I think my favorite one is Ayahuasca Shamanism in the Amazon and Beyond. That was made while I lived in Germany, because I have, lived in Brazil until I was 39, and then lived in Germany and Mexico and the United States. So those were my German years. And it's a really dense anthology of anthropological articles. It also has a summary of my Ph.D. It's the only thing in English about my Ph.D. And it's a really good book. And the cover is by Clancy, my partner, and it's a really beautiful cover. And it's a very prestigious publisher, and it doesn't cost so much. So I really like that's on the more academic side. On the less academic and more in tune more with Chacruna, who is trying to appeal to a larger audience. So Chacruna is trying not to be so academic, but not like media either. We're more accessible than academia, and less hermetic, and less hard to reach, and less expensive than academia. But we're also trying to be deeper than media, that sometimes can be a little glorifying or demonizing, or just too hipster or too cool to pop. And we're not like that either. So the Chacruna Chronicles are about 2,000 words, and we have a trilogy of articles that is based on the Chacruna Chronicles, that is a little bit like the articles that we publish regularly in Chacruna. So we have Psychedelic Justice. These 3 books are with Synergetic Press, who's a wonderful publisher, also an ally of ours, have been very supportive to our work. One is called Psychedelic Justice, and the other is called Queering Psychedelics, From Oppression to Liberation. And we have one upcoming that is in press, and it's anticipated for February, March next year, which is Women in Psychedelics. And so those are other books that are more accessible and kind of easier to read. But I love all my books, like a mother loves their children. I don't have children. My books are my kids, and I have pat and lick each one of them, cared for them for years. And so they were my projects. And these books are incredibly hard to make. The books tend to take at least like 3, 4, 5, 6 years. I just put out ayahuasca global regulation, That book took 5 years. It was very hard to conclude because I kind of created Chacruna in between. I mean, made Chacruna started as a blog, but transformed it into a nonprofit. And the book was kind of parallel to that, from me moving from Mexico to the US. So it was a hard project to complete, but it's there. We also share books as resources in our courses for our students. And so, yeah, there's much to watch. There's also, we put all our conferences for free. At most, we make either 3 to 6 months of them behind a paywall with sliding scale. And then we make them for free. So we're different than this. Like, there's a lot of free summit, free this, free that, and then it's free for 48 hours, and then it becomes a series of lectures that are sold for posterity. So when you get invited to be a speaker and those free things, they don't want to pay you because it's free, but actually after some time it goes behind a paywall. And then you're like working for free for profit companies. That has been, a kind of pattern in this field recently. So I encourage people to, think about those concepts as they consume psychedelic materials, because these free online summits frequently are just like a very normal technique to gain mailing and to create a product for sale. So it's like a flash 48 hours of free costs, but then it's not going to be free anymore. And the way we do it is different. We have always sliding scale scholarship, but we charge for the offerings, and then after a while they go on for free. Except our community forums, which only a few of them are free because that's kind of the main perk of the membership. But yeah, there's a lot of materials. You can delve into our YouTube. There's about 10 entire conferences that are entirely free for people to watch.
That is so wonderful. Thank you so much for everything you do. And where do you get all the energy? Is it the medicines? Is it do you still work with medicines, like an ongoing relationship?
Yes, of course, or else you go totally insane. I'm just coming back from Peru, where I was on an ayahuasca retreat that we had. I was 12 days entirely offline. That was truly liberating. I don't remember being offline in many years like that. We had 5 ceremonies. It was really deep and really powerful. And I felt very grateful, because I learned the more you give to ayahuasca, the more you get back. And so I have created a very kind of exotic and unique career based on my love for ayahuasca. And I feel it's incredibly challenging financially, and the stability is so hard, but it's very rewarding, because there's a lot of people like feeling empty, feeling this void because they're not identified with their jobs. And for me, it has always been a continuity between my spiritual life, my advocacy, my research, my curiosity, my love for these plants, my love for culture, for tradition, because it's really not just the plants, it's the beautiful systems, it's the millennia of knowledge, of wisdom. And it's also the nobility of this folks that, after 500 years of colonization and of us stealing lands and raping women and kidnapping children and burning forests, they still resist, and they are still open to healing people and outsiders. It really breaks my heart. And the inequality that exists, the waste that exists in the global north, the waste of resources and money. And yeah, it's very touching, and I feel very honored to do this work. It's really hard, but it's really beautiful. And I invite everybody to follow us. We just launched this Indigenous Voices resource, which is a compilation of all our Indigenous speakers in all our conferences since 2018, I believe, and also articles that we published on our site. And so there's much to learn. And the joy of learning is as powerful as the joy of the spiritual healing, because I really think that, we are mind and body and soul and all of that. So I think it's important to feed our minds with literature as well. And a lot of people have prejudice against academics or against books in this field, because, some people are only for the books and only for the bureaucratic top-down knowledge. And some people are entirely against books and totally for the experiential knowledge. We say all of it. It's important to learn. It's important to study. It's important to learn other languages. It's important to read about the places you're going to and the peoples you're visiting. And it's important to have firsthand experiences as well. All of it, it's part of a path. And it's a never-ending path. It's a path that, is big. It's a life path. And the more you learn, the more you know you know nothing. And the more you feel like a beginner and a student, and the more you feel like you want to be a part of it. So, yeah, thank you very much for your super kind words on our work and your interest. And thanks for everybody that is listening.
Wow, thank you. That was such a great closing message. I really appreciate that. And thank you for everything. And you are my favorite academic person, with the books and the teachings of the indigenous ways and the spiritual and everything else that comes with the psychedelic medicine. So I really deeply appreciate everything you are doing and your team. And I'd love to invite our listeners to subscribe and somehow get involved and, look at your books and learn from people that are really in the heart, in the front lines of this wave of the psychedelics. And and I'm sure, hope to have you back soon, maybe in the future, and then follow you up on some things. And if you do happen to come to UK, please let us know. Maybe there is a conference waiting to happen or something that we can maybe make it happen together.
Yes, I think everybody should keep an eye on Breaking Convention. I'm their friend, and it's a great organization, and they do wonderful work. And so, for sure, important to keep friendships across the pond, as they say. And thank you very much, and see you all.
Thank you, Pia. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Please do get in touch with myself or Dr. Bia. And also, we'll have all the links and everything that she mentioned in the show notes. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us. Psychedelic Conversations podcast is designed to educate, inform, and expand awareness. For more information, please head over to psychedelicconversations.com. You can also share with your friends or leave a review so that we can reach more people. You can also join us in our private Facebook group to keep the conversation going. This show is for information purposes only, and it is not intended to provide mental health or medical advice. Thanks for listening.